I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all you've done. I'm grateful for the victories you've won. Oh, I'm grateful for the things that you have done. Yes, I'm grateful for the victories we won. I could go on and on and on about your words because I'm grateful, grateful, grateful just to praise you, Lord. Flowing from my heart. Oh, are the issues of my heart. It's gratefulness. I'm going to sing that one more time. I am grateful for the things that you have done. Yes, I'm grateful for the victories we've won. I could go on and on and on about your words because I'm grateful, grateful, so grateful just to praise you, Lord. It's flowing from my heart. It's the issues of my heart. It's gratefulness. I am grateful, grateful, grateful. Grateful, grateful, grateful. So grateful, grateful, grateful. Gratefulness is flowing from my heart. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Gratefulness is flowing from my heart. Thank you, Lord, for all you've done. I'm grateful. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I hope that you have been having a great and wonderful day. Tonight, we are continuing our reading, our Black History Month reads, but as you know, in this space, we read about Black history and what matters to Black people all year long. This month, it just intensifies. So tonight, we are back in the book, What Color is My World? The Lost History of African American Inventors. And if you've been with us, you know we have been learning about all of the different inventions that touch all parts of American life and society, from the railroad to refrigeration to food preservation to electric cells to the telegraph to even sound, and making sure that something as simple as being able to hear in a NASCAR racing series is made available and made safe. We have been touching and impacting American life and culture in so many different ways. Some of them I am learning about for the first time, some of them that have been familiar with me. But tonight we're going to share Mr. Daniel Hale Williams' story. And this is the book that I'm reading from. It's called What Color Is My World? Excuse me. Daniel Hale Williams lived from 1856 to 1931, and he is known for his work with open heart surgery. Open heart surgery is when a patient's heart is opened and internal structures are operated on. About 694,000 open heart surgeries were performed in 2006 alone in the US. I quickly wanted to learn a whole lot more about open heart surgery. I recently had a young relative, 15 years old, that had to go through emergency open heart surgery. And he is now on the heart transplant list. And so this is a subject for me that is now very, very personal. But even the writer here is speaking. So I want to also say good evening to each and every one of you that is coming in, and those of you who will catch the replay either by podcast, IG, or YouTube. One of the first doctors to perform a successful open heart surgery was a Black man by the name of Daniel Hale Williams. Daniel Hale Williams started out working as a barber and attending the Classical Academy to study bass violin. There he met Dr. Henry Palmer, a Civil War hero known as the Fighting Surgeon. I guess this was one of Mr. Mittel's shoulders of giants, because Williams immediately dedicated himself to becoming a surgeon. After becoming a doctor, he became a fighting surgeon like Dr. Palmer by fighting prejudice. Realizing that Black people had a hard time getting into medical and nursing schools, which, by the way, the medical entrance of Black people into medical school has increased within the last year by 20%, which is really good. So realizing that Black people were having a hard time getting into medical and nursing schools or receiving good medical care in hospitals, in 1891, Dr. Williams founded Provident Hospital. It was Chicago's first non-segregated hospital, which also included a nursing school for African Americans. In 1893, he was one of the first doctors to perform open heart surgery without losing the patient to infection afterwards, which is how most of these surgeries ended back then. Dr. Williams also developed antiseptic methods to prevent infection. So now, yesterday, we had someone who, through chemistry, was able to get rid of the bacteria that was causing food to spoil so quickly. And now we have Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who developed an antiseptic method to prevent infection. All these preventative methods happening. The next gentleman I want to read about is someone that a lot of people know. There was actually an elementary school in my neighborhood that was named after him, Charles Drew Elementary. This is the story of Dr. Charles Drew. He lived from 1904 to 1950, and most people do know him because of the blood bank. So this is the artist rendering of Dr. Charles Drew. Some fast facts for you. The U.S. uses about 38,000 units of blood every day. And I do know right now that the Red Cross is talking about the danger of the blood supply in our country being low, and they are urging people to donate. Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood. Count that. 1,000, 2, 1,000. Somebody needs blood. Charles Drew wasn't just one of the most brilliant students at his high school and college. He was also a star athlete. He graduated with honors from McGill University in Montreal, Canada, then went on to earn his Doctor of Medicine and Master of Surgery degrees there as well. He became the first African American to receive a Doctor of Medical Science degree from Columbia University. It was there that he began to specialize in blood. Dr. Drew developed the concept of large-scale blood banks, which saved the lives of a ton of British soldiers and civilians during World War II. Dr. Drew protested against racial segregation regarding the use of blood. Whites got white blood and blacks got black blood. How dumb is that? Because it lacked scientific basis and he was fired because of it. Nevertheless, Dr. Drew was the first black surgeon to serve as an examiner on the American Board of Surgery. In Quebec, they even named a park after him. At the age of 45, the man whose expertise was responsible for saving thousands of lives was unfortunately killed in a car crash. Dr. Mordecai W. Johnson, former president of Howard University, said, "Here we have what rarely happens in history, a life which crowds into a handful of years, significance so great, men will never forget it." I know I won't. Now, let us tune in to our next section on the Harlem Renaissance. And if you give me a moment, I will go grab my portfolio, which is over not too far. So give me 1 minute and I will bring it out. Don't mind all that crashing noise you heard. This is the digital version of my portfolio. Obviously, I'm not going to take out all of my original works because we'll be here all day. But I would like to thank my wonderful husband, who is an architect, but also a graphic designer as well, who actually put my portfolio together for me digitally so I wouldn't have to lug around all of my artwork. But this is just kind of a sample of some work, so we'll get to that in a moment. All right. We're reading What Was the Harlem Renaissance? And now, tonight we are covering chapters 7 and 8, which are going to talk about the artists of the Renaissance, the visual artists, and also the theatrical artists of the Renaissance. Music and writing traveled more easily than heavy sculptures and paintings. Perhaps that is why the fine art made during the Harlem Renaissance took longer to reach the general public. Black magazines helped change that by showcasing the work of new artists. Much of the art in the Harlem issue of Survey Graphic was by a white German illustrator named Fritz Weinhold Rice. But when Locke created the New Negro book later that year, Rice suggested that pictures should be done by a Negro. Enter Aaron Douglas. Now this is their rendering of Mr. Aaron Douglas here in this page. Douglas had been working as a high school art teacher in Kansas. It was that spectacular issue of Survey Graphic that made him decide to come to New York. Once there, he studied with Rice. Douglas went on to become one of the best-known Black artists of his day. Douglas's drawings were influenced by African art. He contrasted sharp Black figures against white backgrounds inspired by African tribal imagery. Douglas went on to illustrate Black magazines like Opportunity, as well as the white-owned Vanity Fair. He is perhaps best known for 4 large murals called Aspects of Negro Life, still on display at the Public Library in Harlem, now known as the Schomburg Center. And this is one of his pieces here. That's in black and white. The Negro in an African setting. The wall-sized paintings were created in 1934 as part of a government project to support the arts. They show the journey of African Americans from Africa through slavery in America and ultimately to freedom. Augusta Savage, also during this time, was a sculptor who had to fight to make art. As a child in Florida, she made ducks and chickens out of clay, but her father actually disapproved. He almost whipped all the art out of me, she recalled. But that did not stop her. Winning a prize at a local county fair gave her the courage to keep sculpting and eventually moved to Harlem. Savage began to sculpt the busts of very famous Black people during the time, including W.E.B. Du Bois and political activist Marcus Garvey. A bust is a likeness of a person's head and chest. Generally, the sculpture stops about here. She sculpted African Americans with warmth and beauty. Gammon is based on her nephew. It was featured on the cover of Opportunity in 1929. The piece won a cash prize that helped her pay for a trip to Europe to study classical art. When she returned, she started an art school in Harlem. There is where Savage began offering free lessons and invited important people like Arthur Schomburg to serve as models for the students. She said, "If I can inspire one of these youngsters to develop the talent I know they possess, then my monument will be in their work." And this is an artist rendering of Augusta working on a piece. Now let's take a little break and talk about the WPA, or the Works Progress Administration. In 1929, the United States economy collapsed. In the next 10 years became known as the Great Depression. Businesses failed and millions of people lost their jobs and homes. In order to help, President Franklin D. Roosevelt started a group of programs called the New Deal. It included the Works Progress Administration. The WPA helped to create jobs for both artists and writers. Thanks to programs like the WPA, Aaron Douglas created his famous set of murals. It enabled Zora Neale Hurston to travel to Florida to collect African American folk tales. It also funded the Harlem Community Arts Center, which Augusta Savage ran. Now, this is when programs were actually helping the marginalized. Imagine that. In 1937, Savage was asked to create a piece for the 1939 New York's World Fair. The Harp was a 16-foot sculpture of African American singers shaped to look like the strings of the instrument. Now, a copy of the Harp and her story in detail can be found on my Facebook page, Historical African American Images, and just type in Augusta Savage and it'll bring up this story. Unfortunately, the piece was made of plaster and destroyed after the fair ended. She had made the piece in the hopes that someone would actually patronize or fund the real piece itself. So she brought the plaster piece to the New York World Fair. And also on YouTube, if you look up Augusta Savage, the Harp, New York World Fair, it will actually bring up a video clip from that time period that shows how monumental this piece was and how absolutely beautiful it was. Unfortunately, it didn't get funded. She had nowhere to put it, so it was destroyed. That same year, Savage opened the first art gallery in the United States, started by a Black woman, showcasing Black artists. It featured another Black female sculptor whose work is actually on display. A permanent piece is on display in the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC. And that Black female sculptor's name is Metavox Warwick Fuller. Fuller was already an established artist by the 1920s. Like Savage, she had also studied in Europe. Fuller trained with the world-famous French sculptor Auguste Rodin. She created large statues in bronze, like Rodin's The Thinker. Fuller's own masterpiece was Ethiopia. It's a bronze of an Ethiopian woman wrapped toe to waist like a mummy, but her arms and her head are free. Fuller said the piece represented the Black community, quote, who had once made history and now, after a long sleep, was awakening, gradually unwinding the bandage of its mummied past. For some, this single piece of art represents the Harlem Renaissance. Now, this is again, an artist rendering of Metavox. Okay. Fuller worked in clay and plaster. James Vanderzee worked with light. As a teenager, Vanderzee won a camera in a contest in Massachusetts. He moved to Harlem in 1906. In 1916, he opened a photography studio with his wife. Over the next 4 decades, Vanderzee created portraits of celebrities as well as scenes of everyday life in Harlem. But as personal cameras became more popular, people began taking their own family photos, and Vanderzee's portrait work was almost forgotten. Fortunately, he was rediscovered in the 1960s. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter honored Vanderzee with the Library of Congress Living Legacy Award. By the mid-1930s, art was alive and thrumming across Harlem. In addition to Savage's school, students could take classes at the Harlem YMCA and the library. Charles Alston and Henry W. Barnum started a studio in 1934 at 306 West 141st Street. Known as 306, the studio became the main center in Harlem for creative Black people in all the arts. The energy of this period would carry into the next decade and beyond, inspiring a new generation of artists. And this is also this artist's rendering of James Vanderzee. So let's take a moment before we go to the stars of stage and screen. And let me take a look in my portfolio. And my portfolio covers not just visual arts, but it also covers the other arts that I'm involved in, but I won't get to that section. So this is one of my pieces that is inspired by Black life. This one is called Breath of Life. And I just wanted to really work on and highlight the innocence of life, the youthfulness of life, and the fleetingness of life. This one is called Shades of Elegance. And I wanted to, of course, celebrate Black women in all of our beauty and melanin and shades and diversity. All of these are also available as prints for sale. This one, at the time, I was having a fascination with the color pink. And so this one is called, these two pieces, one is called Her Pinkness, and the woman with the hat on is called Victorian Lady. So this one is called Her Pinkness, and this one is called Victorian Lady. These pieces, the original pieces, are done in what is called Conte crayon, which is a cross between chalk and oil pastel. Oh my goodness. These two are generally bought together as a set. One is called Dance With Me. This one is called Dance With Me. And this one is called Hold Me. My style of work is called stylized realism. I tend to do very stylized, realistic people. and abstract. But I do realism. This is my realism rendering of Jamon Hansu. I only have a copy of this because literally like 5 seconds after I finished it, somebody bought it from me. And I said, whoa, 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 wait, wait, wait. Before I sell it, let me at least make a copy of my work. So I only have the copy. The original is sold. All right, let me see. What else do I have here? I was working on a series of Blackness and womanhood and royalty, and these two pieces kind of express that. These are in acrylic on canvas. These are also sold. They are no longer in my possession, but prints are available. So the originals are sold and the prints are available. All right, so that's a little bit about my style. There's a little bit more, but I don't want to take up all the time showing artwork. So let's get back to stage and theater. Oh, one last piece I'll show you. This piece holds lots of significance and meaning for me because it's actually based on a spiritual vision I had. A lot of the artists during the Harlem Renaissance time, they focused on Blackness, they focused on migration, they focused on racial injustice, but some of the artists also focused on spirituality and the dream life and the dream world. So this piece holds significance for me because this was around the time when I had an angelic experience and they looked like me. And when I say looked like me, they were all Black. And that was the first time that I was like, well, this is different. Because in my experience, the angels that I have seen were Black. And so I wanted to represent that in an art piece. And this is actually the original. I do not have prints available of this. I don't think I intend to have prints available of this because of the meaning of it for me. But this was my rendering of the angels that I saw. They all had no hair. They weren't this brown skin. They were actually much more dark, almost like the color of the universe, Black. But they had different states of dress. And yeah, they didn't have any hair. None of them had hair. So I just wanted to kind of symbolize that in my artwork. Back to reading. Stars of stage and screen in the Harlem Renaissance. Before television existed, Americans flocked to the theater and movies for entertainment. Even in the worst years of the Great Depression, people would spend what little money they had to see a movie. Movies were also cheaper back then. But it wasn't until the Harlem Renaissance that Black actors gained more attention. In 1927, the singer Ethel Waters starred in a show on Broadway called Africana. 6 years later, she became the first African American performer to receive equal billing with white actors for the Broadway show As Thousands Cheer. Soon, she was among the highest paid actresses on Broadway. Later, she became the first African American to star in her own TV sitcom, Beulah, in 1950. The role she played was a stereotype, a maid working for a white family. But Waters gave depth to the part. She eventually became the first Black person to be nominated for television's biggest award, an Emmy. She was also nominated for the biggest movie award, an Oscar. Florence Mills, the star of Shuffle Along, was a triple threat. A triple threat is someone who can do three types of work very well. Mills could dance, act, and sing. She was wildly popular. She performed in Europe, and another show, Blackbirds, was created just for her. Mills chose to do all Black shows to give work to more African American performers. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I think I need to say that again. Mills chose to do all Black shows to give work to more African American performers. Excuse me. Two Shuffle Along cast members benefited from this: Josephine Baker and Paul Robeson. Josephine Baker was also a triple threat. She was only a teenager when she performed in Shuffle Along. She found even greater success in France, performing her famous Danse Sauvage, or Savage Dance, wearing a skirt of bananas. Baker went on to appear in movies, concerts, and dance performances in Europe and the United States. During World War II, she even worked as a spy helping the French. She risked her life gathering important information that helped free her adopted country from the Nazis. Paul Robeson was the son of a well-to-do mother and a man who had escaped slavery. Robeson quit his job as a lawyer in New York City because of racism and went on to become an actor. Robeson is famous for playing the lead in Shakespeare's Othello. The famous role of a Black king was usually played by white men wearing dark makeup. This is the artist rendering of Josephine Baker and the artist rendering of Robeson in Othello. Robeson also starred in a movie called The Emperor Jones, but he is perhaps best known for singing Old Man River in Showboat on Broadway and in the movie that followed. Robeson's first movie role was thanks to a Black filmmaker named Oscar Micheaux. White producers in Hollywood usually only cast Black actors as servants or enslaved people. And if you've ever acted, you know this. If you've ever taken on the role of acting, there are some very, what we call stereotypical roles that you get put into. Sometimes, as they said here, it can be the role of a servant, an enslaved person, sometimes a disabled person. I know I took on a role. Francis, yeah, see, she said, I've played many slaves. Exactly. I have never played a slave. I don't think I could. They would have to cast me in the ones that rebel. Because I don't think I'd be very good at the other one. I might actually accidentally hit somebody. So I don't think I can do that one. But I have been cast in the role as a housekeeper / guardian. And I've been cast in the role of an autistic artist. So yeah, there are certain roles that only they tend to like push off on Black people. So Micheaux was a farmer when he wrote a novel called The Homesteader. Based on his life, it tells the story of a Black farmer who falls in love with a white woman but cannot marry her because they are not of the same race. Micheaux sold the book door to door. An African-American film company wanted to turn the story into a movie. Micheaux decided to do it himself. He ultimately made over 40 films for Black audiences. In 1948, his final film, The Betrayal, became the first Black-made movie to play in white theaters. Tap dancer Bill Bojangles Robinson was another triple threat and another Harlem Hellfighter. He was the drum major who led James Europe's band up Fifth Avenue in 1919. Robinson started dancing when he was only 5 years old. He appeared on Broadway in Blackbirds in 1928. Robinson went on to make several movies, most famously with white child star Shirley Temple. Unfortunately, roles for African Americans in Hollywood movies remained very limited during this time. Especially in the South, white audiences were not interested in seeing Black characters on screen unless they were servants. And I would almost say that really hasn't changed. It's just different forms of servitude now that they like to see. That gets greenlit, which is why we need more directors and more screenwriters and more people in the writer room changing the narrative and writing stories that humanize us and shows us in all of our forms of living. Yeah, still. Hattie McDaniel won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in 1940. She played an enslaved maid in the movie Gone with the Wind. It would be another 24 years before a second Black actor won, this time for Best Actor. In his acceptance speech, Sidney Poitier said, "It is a long journey to this moment. The journey for equal representation in the movies continues to this day." Yeah. This is the artist rendering of Bill Robinson tap dancing, and also Hattie McDaniel with her Oscar. All right. I am going to stop there. Tomorrow night, we should be wrapping up this book. We have one more chapter. It's called The End and After. And then there are some really gorgeous photographs of all of the people that have been talked about during this book in the back. I know for sure, I'm probably going to buy another copy of this book just so I can dismantle the images in the back and put them in frames and create a mural on one of my walls because they are absolutely gorgeous. Again, I recommend you pick this book up just for yourself. It is less than $10. It is only $5.99. That is a steal, really, for the amount of information that is in here. And it's easy to read. Anybody can read it. If you have an elementary school student that's a little bit advanced in reading, middle school, high school, again, it's a chapter book and it is packed with historical information about a very important period of time for Black people. Surprisingly, I found out recently, earlier last year, that there are actually school districts that do not include the Harlem Renaissance in their curriculum for history. Shocked. As I said, I included in my curriculum by choice, but what I found out was my state does not require it to be taught. They don't add it to the curriculum. So if a teacher doesn't add it to the curriculum, it will not be taught, which means there are generations of children right now learning quote unquote history, but they've never heard of this entire golden age for Black Americans representing themselves through the arts. They haven't heard about it because it's not being taught. So again, this is the importance of getting involved in schools, getting involved with your school board, getting involved with your local schools and your local districts, checking out what is on the curriculum to make sure things like the Harlem Renaissance is not left out of your child's curriculum. I'm sorry, I'm going to get off my soapbox right now. But I just thought I should put that plug out there. So if you're a parent, please go and check the history curriculum for your school and make sure they've included the Harlem Renaissance, because it might not be in the books that they selected. But your teachers can add it in. That's part of the prerogative of what you teach in the classroom. Also, another reason why we need more Black, Indigenous, persons of color who are teaching, who understand that leaving out part of this kind of history is harmful for children who are looking for images, who are looking for people who they can identify with that went through hardship, that overcame, that flourished in their gifts and talents, that were willing to move halfway across the country if necessary, to be in community with other creative people so that they could keep going and prospering and fulfilling their dreams. That's super important. Perhaps we wouldn't have so many Black children committing suicide. Just saying. All right, off my soapbox. If you would like to come in tonight and have some dialogue about what I've read, the inventors or the visual artists or the stage actors and all of that, if you want to share your thoughts and your insights, please feel free to hit the camera on IG and I would love to bring you in. If you are on YouTube, I want to thank you for your time and attention. You get to just sit back and listen to the dialogue. And if you are on podcast tonight, I want to thank you for your time and attention. Please join us. Try to join us live, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, weeknights on IG or on our YouTube page, Church Love 333. Until tomorrow, God bless and good night. Yeah, I see you coming in. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm great. I got plenty of rest today. We got rained out.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we needed it. But anyway, I actually saw the movie Gone with the Wind back in the day with McDaniels.
I saw it one time. I couldn't take seeing it again.
Me either. Me either. We're right there.
I was like, what kind of connection is this?
Yeah. Mr. Bojangles, I actually saw the movies that he did with Shirley Temple.
Okay.
And what many people don't know is they became really, really close friends.
Okay.
You know, he became more like an uncle to her.
Mm.
Yeah, because she would go to him for certain things and stuff that she wouldn't share with nobody else. But also, they wrote a song about it. Mr. Bojangles.
I don't think I've heard it.
That song was based. Yeah, right. That song was based on him, on the way he danced and style and all that. So, yeah, he was. As a matter of fact, that song didn't come out to what, like the 70s or something? I think the 70s or 80s or something that came out. And you're talking about. So this is somebody that was modern that probably didn't even know Mr. Bojangles, didn't get a chance to see him, but probably saw because Shirley Temple movies, they kept coming on and showing all through, and he probably picked up his dancing style from there. But
Lauren Frank Jones said Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, Sammy Davis Jr. was another. As a matter of fact, Sammy Davis Jr. Kind of incorporated Mr. Bojangles' style with what he was doing. So Sammy Davis Jr. was another great one. You know, he was. He did some things that opened doors for others. I mean, I know people like to talk negative about it. Oh, he was a sellout. He thought he was white and all this stuff. But this man opened doors. He opened doors for black people in movies, comedy shows, and a bunch of other stuff. Why? Because he was that black man that could operate on a white man's level.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he was like one of the people that saw an opportunity where it could be had, and he kept the door open.
Right.
Like I could see if he was one of those people, because we have those people these days. That's like, I got mine, and
You get yours.
nobody else is coming through the door because I feel threatened, and I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy being the only one in this space. Let me just say for the
Right.
record, oh, I'm not sure about singing the Bojangles song. Let me just say for the record, I really detest that kind of attitude. I really do.
Yeah.
It
Me
makes
too.
me itch. There's some other words I could say, but I won't say it. Oh, I won't say
Right.
it. But I really detest that kind of attitude of a person who is so excited about being the only person in a space
Mm-hmm.
that they don't hold the door open for anyone else, or they feel threatened by anyone else coming into that space. I think you got some mental health problems, and you need to work on that. Just being
Mm-hmm.
honest. Yeah.
Yes. Um, and the Renaissance thing, I can see them. I can see them not allowing it to be. Well, not. I can see it why it's not a part of the curriculum for two reasons. Number one, it's going to allow black students to feel that, hey, listen, this is us. I
Mm-hmm.
can do this. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to give them faith. It's going to give them drive. And
Mm-hmm.
on the other side, it's going to reveal to them something that they've been teaching. The other side have been teaching their children against. It's going to destroy their narrative.
I mean, yeah, it would just
Lazy,
it would
don't do
essentially
anything.
it would essentially destroy the narrative that they've created everything. It would definitely
Exactly.
destroy that. It would destroy
Yeah.
the narrative of musicality and where that comes
Mm-hmm.
from. It would destroy the narrative of black people not creating their own,
Mm-hmm.
and their own movies and their own films. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, it's been probably in the last maybe 6 or 7 years that I personally found out about Oscar Micheaux. Now, how powerful would that have been for me to know that in high school, when I was doing, more singing and wanting to get into theatrical things, it would have been powerful to know that information then.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I took Introduction to Theater. Never mentioned Oscar Micheaux. I want my money back. Okay, Theater 3000, Florida State University. Y'all owe me some money.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went through a whole Introduction to Theater, and not one time did they mention Oscar Micheaux. I'll give you another one. Not one time did they mention Hattie McDaniels. Not one time did they mention Sidney Poitier. I want my money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want my money back. So,
Mm-hmm.
it is so important. Yeah. Lady Francis says, we all need our money back. Exactly. We paying all this money for this half-baked education that y'all selling. I just, yeah, it makes me angry when I think about some of this stuff. It wasn't until college really, that I learned about how many black artists there were. Like, I knew about a few because I was doing my own studies in that. And I have black artists in my family. My father was an amazing, incredible visual artist. And he was also an amazing artist in terms of like cars. Before there was ever a thing called Pimp My Ride, like my dad was doing that for decades. And he would also do the auto detailing work for the cars for the Miami Vice show. He was the detailer for the vehicles for that show. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was always like around the arts, so I knew black artists in terms of my own family, but it would have been helpful to know all these other artists and not find out 19, 20 years old. I was like, you mean to tell me all these art classes I've had, I done learned all these Western artists, all these artists from other countries, France, Europe, Germany, Dutch, Swedish, but you can't tell me about the African American ones? Are we really doing this? This is what we're doing? This is what we're doing in education? So I made it my business as an art educator myself to start off with the artists who look like me. Because when I ask students, name some famous artists, and all they can name is Michelangelo, Picasso, Da Vinci.
Van Gogh.
Sometimes they can name Van Gogh, but usually they can name Picasso, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo. And that tells me all I need to know about where I need to start my lessons.
Well, see, now,
and I usually start with the artists of the Harlem Renaissance.
They probably got those names from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they know that they were named after artists.
They were, yeah. Pastor Penn.
I know, we both crazy. I know.
Oh my goodness! And I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up, but I'm just saying, like, if I look around, and this is to me is also awareness. If I look around as an educator, and I have a room full of Black children, why wouldn't I start off with the artists that look like them? It just makes sense to me, because I'm trying to bring them into my world. I'm trying to engage them in art. A lot of students who take art don't even like art to start out with. Right. It's usually an elective that got forced on them. They had to choose something, or their parents did their schedule at the last minute and the only elective left open was art. So I get a lot of students that get dumped into my space that don't want to be there. So the way I work with that is I introduce them to artists that look like them, that are doing incredible work, have done incredible work all over the world. And it opens up their mind that, wait a minute, if they can do this, maybe I can give this a try in my class. And I've had so many students that came into my space like, this is stupid, this is crazy, I don't want to do this, I don't think I can, to being serious artists and saying, I can actually see myself making a career out of this. And teaching them all the ways, because I had one student, oh my gosh. I had one student tell me, what does art have to do with anything? It
has to do with everything.
I said, if art has to do with nothing, take off your watch, put down your iPhone, and I wasn't gonna tell him to take off his clothes, but I was like, everything you got on is because of an artist.
Don't sit down. You could have said, don't sit down anymore.
You can't sit down. I mean, you could on the ground, but I'm just saying, art is all around you. So when a child comes in and says something like that, that tells me that there are people in their life that have not helped them to connect the pieces. That's what that tells me. Doesn't tell me that they're not capable of doing it. It doesn't say that to me. It says they have lived a life where the adults in their life have not connected the pieces for them. And maybe that's because the adults in their life don't have their own pieces connected. But what I said, we cannot continue to have generations of children that don't know how to connect the dots. So when I tell a child who says, I'm not good at math, but they have incredible skill drawing, I'm like, if you can draw like this, you're already doing math. You just don't know you are. There's no in the world you can draw like this and not have a mathematical mind. Now let me show you through art how you're already doing math. I wish somebody would have explained that to me. I wouldn't have struggled so much with algebra and geometry
Right.
and all these other
Right.
subjects. But once I started making the connections, I was like, I wish somebody had done that for me as a young person. So now I'm doing it. I'm always trying to do for my students and for those I come into contact with. I'm trying to do for them what I wish somebody would have did for me. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out here. I'm out here. My goal is to make more artists in the world because artists revolutionize things. They transform things. They change things. They cause people to see and think differently. That's what what's his name? Steve Jobs did. He's still revolutionizing the world with the way he created and designed, and he's not even here anymore. So, but we also must know and start out with the first artist, the ultimate artist, the eternal artist, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of all creativity, God.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Final thoughts, Pastor Ben. I know I've talked a lot.
Listen, well, we have to, people like you and I, we have to introduce these things to our people. See, because nobody else is focusing on them. Nobody else really cares. Well, I'm not going to say nobody else because there are white teachers that go there, be quiet, because number one, they know. See, they know. So they will teach like that.
And let me put it out there. Part of the reason why I am the way I am is because I had white teachers that came into Black spaces that embraced us for who we are and did not try to change us into them. So I'm going to shout out my art teachers, Tom Wyroba, Craig Kirk, Lori, I can't remember her last name right now. Paraskevi Rallis, she was my mentor. She was a Greek Orthodox Christian woman who was a photographer for James Brown, who had retired from serving James Brown through photography and came to work in the hood at the Magnet Art School. And she took me under her wing and mentored me from the time I was in 5th grade until her passing, which happened, I think, the middle of my sophomore year of college. So mentors, some people say mentors, I really now say coach because I know what a mentor means. But coaches, guides are so integral and important to young people. These were teachers, and I'm naming these teachers specifically because these were teachers that worked in the hood. They got lower pay. And they would drive through the hood. And anybody knows South Florida, you knew in the 80s how dangerous my neighborhood was. They would drive into the hood. They would pick me up on the weekends. This was when teachers were not banned and barred from doing so much for students outside of the classroom. They would drive to the hood. They would ask my mom, can I take your child on a field trip? And they spent time with me beyond what they were contracted to do. They went into the hood, they would pick me up, and they would take me to museums. My museum experiences came from teachers who took me out of my neighborhood on their own accord, and took me to museums. My very first museum experience was in elementary school when my own artwork was being shown at the Bacardi Gallery in Miami. If you know about the Bacardi Gallery, you know it's a very well-known gallery. That was my first artist experience. My art had been selected to be shown in the Bacardi Art Gallery, and then it was exhibited in a local bank. And then somebody bought the piece. Somebody's got my piece from elementary school in their house somewhere.
Okay, well, since you're giving shout outs, I'm going to give a couple out because I didn't, well, when I was in grade school, you went through the art thing, a little art here, a little out there painting, a little bit of drawing and finger painting and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school, I didn't do any art, but in high school, I took art classes, and I had two awesome ones. But the most important one was Carla Stiles at Piper High School. Now, I think the other one was Susan Facilis. Her last name was Facilis. She was a great teacher. They both pretty much took me under their wings, and they, I guess maybe they saw what I had, what was in me. And when I say Carla Stiles pulled it out, I mean, she pulled it out.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to, when I was drawing, I would draw serious things, like it's going to look exactly like this. She taught me how to basically go an abstract way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See? So, and I appreciate that, and she would, and listen, so much so that after I graduated, whenever I would go back there to visit, that's where I went. I wasn't going nowhere else. I went to her classroom, and I actually helped her sometimes with, with what she was doing with the teaching and stuff.
Yep.
So, but
all of that makes a difference.
Both were white.
Yep. All of that makes it.
Both were white.
All of that makes a difference, and that's why I say, if you're going to actually be an ally, there are ways where you can actually be an ally, and so it takes more than just lip service in this hour. If you say that you are for Black children, if you say you are for Black creatives, it takes more than lip service. I want to read this before we get off tonight. Lauren says, it was two white ladies that put me on my first stage and acknowledged my voice. I happened to be at a white school, but I remember feeling seen for the first time during an awful time of my life. Wonderful. That's wonderful. And so again, it matters. It really does. And so this journey that we're on with Daring Dialogues of reading aloud, this was something that God told me to do. He said, get up here and read and help people to learn about all different kinds of subjects. It doesn't have to be a Bible. It's learning about whatever subject we want to learn about. And so that's what we have been doing. And I've been doing it since 2016. I'm going to continue to do it until the Lord tells me to stop. I don't think he's going to tell me to stop. So I'm here, And so I just encourage people to do what is in your heart to do. Whatever way that you've been called to make a dent or to make an impact in society, do that thing and do it with passion. Do it with all your heart. Don't do it halfway. Give yourself into that thing. And this is something, when people talk about what's your passion, what would you do if you were not getting paid for it? I'm not getting paid for this right now. But I tell you what, God has blessed my life in so many other ways. He sustained me in so many other ways. And I'm thankful to just take an hour on these weeknights and read and share and dialogue, because that's what it's about. I'm not here to, debate anybody per se. I'm just here to just put the information out there. And hopefully it's encouraging, it's inspiring, it's enriching, and it's motivating you to do whatever it is that you are called to do. What I say is, as God told me, just be light. That is the most daring opposition to darkness. It's simply radiating from the very place of who you are. If you just do that, if you just simply be, it's in opposition to darkness. It's in opposition to the forces that would try to take people out through anxiety and fear and depression and all these other things. There's so many people that are hiding their light behind a bushel. So if God just told you, get on social media and post one sentence a day, if that's all he asked you to do, just do that. Be faithful in it. Maybe you don't want to do video. Maybe that's not your thing, and that's okay. Maybe you want to just do a podcast. I started out just doing Facebook live streams. And then the Lord was like, get on Periscope. And I was like, alrighty then. And he was like, do YouTube. And I was like, okay. Then he was like, move it to IG. I was like, okay then. And then he said, now start a podcast. So this has been an ongoing journey of obedience for me. And I'm just glad and thankful that you all are joining me in this process. Pastor Ben, final thoughts.
You and I, we have to continue doing what we're doing, and get other people. Hopefully, other people will take the lead. Will follow and start teaching the truth. Start teaching about our people and what's real. Because I know you. Listen. I think some of you rubbed off on me after all these years. Because I remember meeting you on the line with Dr. Larry Hill. And before you even started your thing. So, and I followed you there. Once you started, I jumped in, and I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot.
I appreciate that.
So, and so, we learned, and we both learned a lot from Apostle Larry Hill.
Yes, and we want to continue to lift him up in prayer. We know that he is going through a serious health challenge, and we just believe that God will heal him. And so that's what we're speaking. That's what we're declaring. So those of you who believe in prayer and want to send your thoughts and your prayers his way, his name is Larry Hill, and we're just asking God to heal him from all form of disease and specifically cancer. So thank you, Pastor Ben. I appreciate those kind words. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. Again, I want to thank you for your time and attention, as we know it is precious and valuable. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what, Pastor Ben?
Light.
Be light. Take care, everybody, and good night, and God bless.